Good evening and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting on Thursday the 23rd of January. Very good evening and welcome to everybody who's joining us in both the physical room this evening and virtually on the screen. Welcome. Thought we'd start off with a little piece of housekeeping. So we are not expecting a fire alarm, and should the alarm sound, please exit via the nearest exit and gather in the car park next to the library. And if I could request that mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Please note that we are using hybrid meeting arrangements with both officers and councillors who are not members of the Cabinet having the option to join the meeting via Zoom, and we are also live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. Can I please remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and to turn them off when they have finished. Finally, anyone attending the meeting remotely must use their raise hand function when they wish to speak and to declare any interests at the appropriate time. If anyone attending the meeting remotely loses connection, the meeting will continue and you'll have the option to follow the meeting via the YouTube live stream. And although I said turn electronic devices to silent, I can hear mine pinging away. It is now silent. Okay, open up with item 1, apologies for absence.
Chairman, I have none.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 2, the minutes to confirm as a correct record the minutes of this Cabinet meeting on the 9th of January. So moved.
Happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, for members to declare any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest they may have on any item on this evening's agenda. And there are none noted. Item 6 is the outcome on the proposal for a locality model for special education needs in Torbay, and you will hear through this debate that being referred to as SEND. Councillor Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and I'm absolutely delighted to propose these recommendations. I believe this does mark... Oh dear, I've got a little bit of something going on there. Don't want to be silenced. I do believe this marks the start, hopefully, of a new deal for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and a fresh start for Parkfield, and it covers the arrangements for the winding down of the medical tuition service. So there are 3 parts to the recommendation and 3 parts to the report. I think, for clarity, so everyone knows exactly what it is that we are voting on, even though it's going to take a while, I think I should read the recommendations. So they are at 3.1, that the blueprint for a Torbay locality model be approved as the framework for a pilot for those parties wanting to be a part of the same. 3.2, that the Director of Children's Services, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, be given delegated authority to develop the scope and operating procedures of the pilot with interested parties, schools and clusters in order for the pilot model to run between June and December 2025, and the outcomes of the pilot be presented to Cabinet in early 2026. That the Director of Children's Services be instructed to continue to work with other schools not in the pilot to grow confidence and co-produce a locality system which they can support. That the Head of Legal Services be instructed to undertake all necessary arrangements to extend the lease held by People's Parkfield to include a lease of the MySpace building at Parkfield, with the requirement that Mayfield Sixth Form is provided with a sublease. that the Director of Children's Services be instructed to co-produce a service level agreement with People's Parkfield and Mayfield Sixth Form, which ensures that Mayfield Sixth Form can be a long-term tenant on the site, ensuring financially sustainability for the building, whilst key groups in the community, such as electively home-educated families, youth services and care experience and cared for children, other disadvantaged young people, can be provided for in this newly run community model. That Torbay Education Limited ceases to trade as an arm's length company of Torbay Council as the staff delivering medical tuition services transition to a new delivery model in line with the outcomes of the consultation, and that the Chief Executive be given delegated authority to oversee the practical arrangements to bring about the cessation of Torbay Education Limited as an arm's length company of the Council. So that absolutely is the recommendation, or those are the recommendations. 3 aspects as I referred. And it's so important that we do things differently for our children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. The idea of a locality model, which the Cabinet supported for consultation last June or July if I remember correctly, is that more help and support is provided earlier on in clusters of schools, with less reliance on EHCPs, Educational Health and Care Plans. So it is explained at 1.3 in a nutshell. Through the pilot, this model will see whole communities coming together to support children and young people within their local area. Torbay's SEND provision will become needs-led, focusing on the needs of children and young people within each local area and allowing local stakeholders to make decisions on how the children and young people's needs can best be met. So it is to increase provision, help and support for children with special educational needs and disabilities without the need for having an educational health and care plan. I attended a meeting of leaders for children's services, counsellors, a regional meeting the other day, and was told in 2024, early 2024, Torbay had the highest rates of EHCPs, 6.2 out of 100 children on average. A national average is about 5. So we are outliers in terms of the numbers of plans, but unfortunately that does not follow through with the performance and outcomes that we would wish to see for children and young people in the Bay. So I am going to put in context why this change is needed. It follows on from the report that we had. We had a inspection by Ofsted, a joint inspection by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission in 2021 that absolutely highlighted the need for change in the Bay. There was a lot of activity, a lot of meetings, a lot of plans, but it hasn't led to an improvement in the experience for children and young people with SEND. So I shall read out what is there on 1.1 on your pack. So we have had a 42% rise in EHCPs between 2017 and 2022 and continued rise in requests to assess, but only 2 of 5 non-selective secondary schools are Ofsted good or better, with nearly 47%, so nearly half of Torbay resident secondary school students attending provision that is currently less than good. Suspensions are rising rapidly, with only Norfolk suspending a greater proportion at primary. 75% of all exclusions are children with SEND, and 88% in primary school have special educational needs and disabilities. Those excluded struggle to find mainstream places due to resistance from schools to accept pupils through fair access. Alternative provision for children excluded is beyond capacity. Elected home education numbers have risen rapidly since 2019 and continue to rise at a rate of circa 8 per week. Of those elected home education families who responded to a recent survey, 61% indicated a failure to meet SEND needs and to prevent mental health issues. The number of elected home education children equates to a loss of £2.5 million to school budgets in Torbay because pupils come with a payment. So we've got now in excess of 500 children who are elected home education. That is 500 children's payment that is not going to schools. School absence, including part-time timetables, is high, with absence due to illness being the highest of all local authorities in primary and the second highest in secondary. 682 children and young people are currently waiting for an initial assessment for their mental health needs. We've been told of waiting times of 2 years for speech and language therapy and 3 years for neurodevelopmental assessments. So we absolutely have to do better for our children and young people. This, I believe, makes a start in that process. I'd like to thank Hannah Baker, who has worked with schools, with families. I've attended some, but not all, of the meetings, and you've done a great job in getting us to where we are now with this proposal for a pilot scheme. The responses at the consultation, so the Cabinet decided, yes, let's have a consultation. We went out to these various meetings, and I think it is fair to say that some of the responses in the consultation put forward that people weren't, particularly some school leaders, weren't happy to embrace these proposals initially. But what has happened in recent weeks since the consultation concluded is that there have been more conversations and meetings with school leaders, and primary school heads in particular are now coming forward to work on a pilot scheme. So in the report we have 28 of our primary schools now, and there's real enthusiasm from those schools. I think councillors have received letters and emails from primary school heads encouraging them to support this initiative. But I think it is fair to say, if you read the report, you read the consultation responses, you might think, well, you know, you're going ahead with it, but there's been considerable opposition at the first asking. But then there have been the conversations since, and I think we have won hearts and minds. We very much hope to get more of the remaining primary schools on board. We very much would like to see some of the secondary schools come on board, and there are conversations going on. So we're making progress absolutely in winning people over. The two slight errors that I've spotted, or two things I think I should comment on in the report on page 19, as I have it in my pack at 5.6, where we have the locality model, including clusters of professionals, was put forward in the consultation as a proposal. There were 63 coming back saying disagreeing or strongly disagreeing, and we're suggesting in brackets that that's 14.58%. In fact, it's more like a third. So there's a little bit of a mistake there. I'm sorry to point that out. I should have pointed that out or noticed it before. But later on, where there's breakdowns in the consultation, it makes that clear that it's about a third. So we had nearly a half supporting the proposal, the fundamental proposal of the locality model, about a fifth saying neither for nor against, and about a third were against. And I think my maths may be slightly wrong there, but anyway, there's a bit of a mistake there. And there is one primary school that is mentioned as supporting, but for whatever reason it isn't actually one of the primary schools in the 28 that are coming on board. When I queried that, apparently that particular primary school, without naming names, made 2 submissions to the consultation, and one apparently in favour and one against. But for the moment, they're not actually coming on board. But we hope that we'll win them over. But I thought for clarity I should point that out. So it is a new way forward for children with special educational needs and disabilities. Goodness me, we need to make change. I very much hope that colleagues will support this, and I hope the schools and families will get behind it. The game changer for me, and I think the game changer for schools, was when health has come on board. So the Integrated Care Board saying that they want to be a part of this. I think bringing health working with the council and schools in partnership, which we have done successfully in Torbay for 20 years for adults, but which we have not done so successfully for children and young people. I see that as a major way forward. So we have this pilot. I always get this wrong. The pilot is for communication, speech and language. Those three things. It's communication, speech and language. That is what the pilot is. But that's the start, and we hope beyond that it'll open up and other subjects and other areas will be brought in. So please support this. It's also a new lease of life for Parkfield. So in an earlier life, I was very much involved with the Parkfield project that for whatever reason has never quite met the expectations and the hopes that we placed as it being a centre for activities for children and young people, youth activities, youth provision in the Bay. That hopefully will also now change. It seems absolutely right that the sixth form for Mayfield shares it with the community, and the community make it the centre that we always intended for youth activity in the Bay. So that will be something that will be really good news for children and young people in the Bay. So I've gone on, but I think this is the main item of business tonight, in fairness to the others, and I wanted to get it all off my chest and hope, please, that you support it. And I know that we have people here from the school community who are going to speak as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you indeed, Councillor. We'll move across to Councillor Lewis, who will formally second the proposal.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, as always. And well done, Councillor Bly, for giving full details on this, a very important item on the agenda tonight, one of the most important we've had for some time, locality model. You mentioned Parkfield. I would like to say a bit more on Parkfield, which are 3.4 and 3.5 on the recommendations, not only as a cabinet member, but also as one of the local councillors for Preston. Most of us know that People's Parkfield took over the old building at Parkfield and have really made a success of it over the past 12 months, bringing in local charities into that building and making sure it is brought back to life. Mayfield sixth form, and it's good to see the headmaster here today, Stuart Heron, is desperate for more accommodation. It really makes sense to use that building more by bringing in Mayfield, which resolves their problem of a shortage of accommodation. They will have the building during the day. People's Parkfield can then use it in the evening, the weekends, and in school holidays, therefore bringing that building back into life. It seems really sensible because over the past, well, too long, Parkfield, the new Parkfield, has really not been used for the purpose that it was built for. And Councillor Bye stated that it was built during his period. It was. And I was the portfolio for Children's Services when it first came through, about 2011, 2012. And I think it's lost its way over that period of time. By this recommendation, I believe those two organisations, Mayfield School and People's Parkfield, working together can come up with a real solution to the new Parkfield site and make it work and transform it for the people of Torbay, for the youth of Torbay. They have a really good site there with a BMX track, other facilities, climbing frames. It's really there and it must be used. In the past few years, as I say, it has not been used. I would like to think if we came back in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years' time, that will be a real hub for the youth of Torbay. It's ideally situated in the middle of the bay in Preston. And thank you for putting this into this document to make it clear that that is helping the youth today. And I'm really happy to second this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. At this point, we would normally invite questions and debate both around the Cabinet table and outside of the Cabinet table. However, we are joined this evening by two guest speakers. So delighted to welcome Tracy Cleverly, who is the Chair of the Local Education Inclusion Partnership and the Chief Executive of the Learning Academy Trust, who wishes to address us this evening. Fantastic. If you use the microphone at the desk there, that's brilliant. Just need to press the little green button.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Evie Semmons. I am Director of Vulnerable Pupils and Inclusion at the Learning Academy Partnership. We have the privilege of serving 4 communities within Torbay: St Michael's, Warbury, Ellicombe and Ilsham. And like many of you, I've lived and worked in Torbay for a long time, over 20 years. 18 of those years have served as teacher and then head teacher at Ellicombe CAV Academy. So very familiar with the high levels of deprivation and the challenges that are faced by so many communities within Torbay as a whole. And with that deprivation, we see the huge challenges that you'll all be very familiar with around mental health, health needs, domestic abuse, substance abuse. We see those issues in our schools every day, and it is increasing. I would also say that you're all familiar with the national SEND challenges that we see nationally and the increasing need. And the very need to look forward and have a change, as Councillor Bai said, something different that's sustainable and very much at an early intervention stage. So combined with that, we know that outcomes for pupils in Torbay are not great, as have already been set out, particularly for children living in poverty, and a large proportion of those also have high levels of SEND. So you'll be familiar that in Torbay, outcomes for pupils in early years, but also in year 6, are well below national averages. And we see the challenges around that, and we work incredibly hard to support our families. So really I wanted the opportunity just to share with you how beneficial I see this pilot could be. Children with speech, language and communication needs are increasing in numbers nationally, but also within our own schools, and we see that. And young people, children coming into our earlier settings or within our primary schools, have increasing levels of need with their speech, their communication, speech and language needs. We've seen children who have never left the house joining our nurseries and putting on shoes for the first time, and really low levels of language and literacy. And of course, for those children with speech, language and communication needs, the world can be a really scary place. They don't understand the world around them. They find it hard to communicate, and therefore levels of social, emotional and mental health needs are increasing for those children. And I've seen firsthand where early intervention has not been able to be put in place, how children's speech and language and communication needs can really increase into mental health needs, and therefore behaviour needs, and therefore suspensions, etc., etc. And we know that life chances for children who have suffered suspensions or permanent exclusion are extremely challenging. So SLCN, or communication needs, are increasing nationally, and as I said, I've seen them within our own settings increase. National research shows that 81% of children with social, emotional and mental health needs do have a significant language disorder, so there is real research linking those two things together. So this pilot project, which focuses predominantly on SLCN, speech, language and communication needs, at the heart of it for our youngest pupils, is absolutely essential. And it was during the consultation that Stuart here very much pointed out the absolute need to focus on our earliest and our youngest children, and I think that's absolutely essential. We're really excited by this pilot. As a trust, we work in a really aligned way with systems and processes, sharing expertise and shared accountability. And this pilot model mirrors part of that working together with a shared vision and values for our children, sharing our expertise and working really hard together with health and social care in a really joined up way. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you why I see this as a really positive step forward, working together for the most vulnerable children in our society, for the good of the Bay and the future. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. And we're going to invite Stuart Heron, who's already been mentioned as the head of Mayfield School, who's going to address the Cabinet this evening. Thank you for joining us this evening, Stuart. Little green button when you're ready.
Thank you for having me. Really, what I wanted to try and articulate this evening was sort of notion that we've been in a perfect storm with SEND, and Mayfield particularly around sufficiency, which is the number of spaces that the school has to support children with really complex needs. And we ended up in a position where we have not been able to accommodate on our sites all of the young people that have the need in the Bay that we could support. And obviously it feels to me like if you have that perfect storm of a sufficiency problem, an issue with the building that we're currently in, an issue with the fact that there are only 4 young people in Parkfield at the moment, and the fact that there hasn't been, despite will and people trying, a collaboratively way of operating after hours. You know, if you apply Occam's razor to that, we're looking for maybe not the simplest solution, but an ideal solution. So it feels to me, in the space that we're in recognising that SEN needs in the Bay are so significant, and there is a need to support them really cleverly and in such great depth, that there's an opportunity for Parkfield particularly to become a hub for SEN support. That actually, if you think about what's happening with Holcombe and the move, actually that part of Painted could become a regionally, recognised area for a centre of excellence for SEND. And part of the reason for me coming to speak to you is to be really clear that if we've learned anything from the past, the organisation that is taking the lead in Parkfield has got to drive the participation and collaboration with the other people working in it. And I think that Mayfield is really well set up to deliver that collaboration with organisations such as Play Torbay, and we will have a really good relationship with them. The fact that we've got, a lot of young people who have SEN needs, an education healthcare plan, who have a social worker or on a particular pathway in children's services. For example, there are 140 young people who are on direct payments for short breaks. Actually, in the winter in Torbay, we know it's a gorgeous place to live, but actually there's nowhere to go. And actually a venue like Parkfield that could be open after hours into the early evening, at half term, during the holidays, could be such a life enhancing opportunity, a place that young people can go to feel safe, to have their needs met, and what we're hoping is that we can then bring in a really collaborative way of working with our partners, and ensure that bit of Paynton isn't ghettoised any longer. Actually, there is, it's being used to its full potential for the first time in a long time, and the light that comes from Mayfield, and I can assure you that is the case, anyone who's managed to visit, actually begins to permeate, and we work collaboratively with our partners. And as you so brilliantly pointed out, if we return to this conversation in 18 months, what we should be seeing is a really positive example of collaboration between the local authority, with the education sector, and the third sector partners, who are so important in driving forward the positive agendas that we're talking about this evening.
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to questions, debate or comments from in the Cabinet or outside of the Cabinet at this point. Thank you, Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure for myself and the other Barton with Watcombe councillors to visit Mayfield School before Christmas, I think it was, and it's always an inspiring visit to that school. So, and there are lots of challenges for that site and just around it as well. So this proposal has been several months in gestation, and I want to thank the Director of Children's Services for her call, I think it was in the summer, to outline in detail what was being proposed, and that was a very useful phone call. The last government and the current government are very much encouraging councils to bring forward proposals to try to reduce the financial spending on SEND, which has been touched on today, and that spending is in danger of overwhelming councils up and down the country, and also try to improve things for children and parents as well. This challenge is nationwide, as has been discussed, and not just Torbay. And this proposal before us is innovative and also tries to find a solution for the building and painting as well, Parkfield, that also meets the needs of the community too, and that's really important. Whilst being supportive of this proposal, I am, however, aware of email correspondence from at least one parent to the lead member for children and to the leader of the council raising some issues about the proposed model. The concerns included, amongst other things, worries about the levels of consultation responses from parents and children, what impact there will be on the 88% of exclusions being SEND pupils, i.e. what will success look like on this statistic following this trial, and what will happen to pupils in schools not taking part in that trial. And there are other concerns too, which I won't go into now. I have to say that I was slightly surprised by the lack of response really from the lead member to that email that I saw, and he talks in his speech a lot about dealing with schools, but not about much to do with parents, and his response was simply to pass comments over to officers, which seems a rather strange thing to do, and that contrasts markedly with what I imagine the approach would have been from the previous lead member, Councillor Law. So I would perhaps welcome the lead member perhaps touching up in his responses to the comments from the email he's received from parents, and perhaps trying to provide some reassurance to them too as part of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we'll come back to the Cabinet then, and let's come back to the main substantive point this evening. Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you. I had the experience of going to one of the consultation meetings, in fact the consultation meeting that was attended by most of, if not all of the educational establishments in Torbay that was held in Paynton. And I think it's fair to say that there was quite a bit of negativity in the room at that meeting. Some positivity, not all negativity, but quite a bit. And I think it's worth dwelling on the fact that that was very much the time at which people were filling in consultation responses. Perhaps some of that was because the scope of what was being suggested for change seemed daunting. Perhaps some of it was that the detail of how this would work had yet to be explored. But what I have seen now and what I've been hearing back from colleagues and in approach to me from one of the local schools in my ward shows that things have moved substantially from that time onwards. And I think it's worth taking note that if the consultation was done today, I think the results would probably look very different than the consultation that was done and has been published in these papers. So although we should all note consultation, I think it needs to be put in the context of the time it was taken. I'm certainly, as an individual, very aware that at that meeting there was a lot of expression, even from people who were being negative about the proposed solution, a lot of expression that change was needed, that the existing system was not serving our young people well. Sorry, I'm catching it from my colleague. and I think I'm very pleased to see that we've got to where we are now. I think what's important also from taking this forward is people, the educational establishments are now joining in with this because they're choosing to. And I think that's a fundamental change in a relationship where perhaps at the meeting that was expressed, they felt they were coming into it because they had to. And I think that change, to me, that change of feeling it's a cooperative working between the authority and the schools is absolutely fundamental to the chances of this succeeding and producing those benefits for our young people. So I am really pleased to see that change. I'm really glad that I went to that consultation because I have seen how it's changed since then to where we are today. I think that we will need to be flexible moving forward. I think that it's very important that we don't sort of rigidly go down a route if we find it's not working to best effect. Let's vary things, let's change things as we go along to try and get the best possible result. Not only in terms of reducing the costs for the authority, but most importantly for providing the benefits for our young people. I think we have to keep that as foremost in our mind going forward. And I think the other thing I heard at that school, at that consultation, was coming across clearly. The problems start even before the young people get to school. You mentioned it in the presentation, and it's absolutely vital to get in at that early stage, and that seems to me to be very much where we're now focused. So I'm very happy with where we are, and absolutely happy to support where we are. I think we've still got a lot to learn over the next few months to find out the best place where we're going to end up.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands around the cabinet table, but just before I come back to Councillor Bye, I would say that understand where we were with the consultation, and when you first kind of understand some of the feedback from the consultation and then read the paper, there appears to be a disconnect. However, the reality is, so as Councillor Timon was saying, so much has happened from the original piece and the people and schools effectively coming together that we're now in a position to, because effectively tonight we're not saying this is the locality model and this is how it'll be, full stop. We're saying let's run a pilot on this locality model. It certainly appears to be the right direction of travel. We've certainly got the schools who are happy to engage in the pilot locality model, and I'm sure that we will learn from this to allow us to help roll this out across the whole of Torbay moving forward. So certainly I'm extremely supportive. At that point, I will move back to Councillor Bye to sum up before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm absolutely thrilled to hear from our school leaders, and thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm really pleased that there is now the support, and it's absolutely about the council with health and the voluntary sector working with schools, and I see this absolutely as a way of creating better relationships for the benefit of children and young people in the Bay. I'm genuinely sorry that I missed the consultation meeting in October with school leaders. That seems to be the exciting one. I've heard all kinds of reports of that meeting, and as our late Majesty said, recollections differ. So we hear different things, but things have moved on, and that is the key thing. But I did meet with parents with respect to Councillor Long. I very much impressed at the meeting with the Tissues and Issues group, which was extremely well attended with a lot of, it was predominantly mums. I think one dad turned up, but he didn't stay very long. It was predominantly the mums, and we heard from them, unfortunately, their experiences, and their experiences in the main had been poor. And then I went to the consultation meeting over in the Brixham Family Hub, and again with Hannah, and we met not so many families, but we did meet families there. So I am very much in contact with families. And to feed back to the email correspondence from the lady who's been in touch with me, and by the sound of it Councillor Long as well, it's interesting what she put in her emails, and I responded to 4 emails today, and it's very difficult when you're chairing a corporate parenting meeting this afternoon and then you're preparing for a lengthy cabinet meeting to necessarily respond in the great depth that people might want about their own individual children and their own individual children's circumstances. But I did respond to the lady 4 times, and what she may not know, what she doesn't know, but please feel free to share, is in a sense what she said to me has helped me shape the comments that I made at the beginning, that this is a beginning. This one setting up a pilot model to focus on speech, language and communication is not the end of the process, that there are children with a whole variety of special educational needs and disabilities. We must not lose sight of that, and doing our very best for all of them. But this pilot is a start of working in a different way, and absolutely I think it's right to focus on one area and then we look at other areas and hopefully bring in more schools. So I will send her a fifth email when I get home, and hope to win her over. So there we are. So we go to the vote, Mr. Chairman. I hope that members will support.
Thank you very much indeed. And moving to that vote, all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Move on to item 7, which is the Torbay food strategy, and across to Councillor Tranter, who will talk us through this one. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So the Torbay food strategy. Food is fundamental to our health and well-being. As a council, we are committed to ensuring that we support communities in the Bay to have access to fresh, healthy food wherever possible. We know that we can't do this alone, and that working with our partners is key to promoting positive changes in how we produce and consume food locally. As our food system stretches around the world, we recognise that many things are out of our control. The food strategy that we are discussing today focuses on the activities that we can take control of locally to promote positive change over the next few years. Alongside the final published strategy will sit a project plan which will be taken to scrutiny for colleagues to input into due course. The strategy has been produced collaboratively with Torbay Food Partnership, which is hosted by Local Motion and which the Council is a key partner. It has been shaped by the Sustainable Food Places Initiative. I thank the members of Torbay Food Partnership for their contributions to the strategy and ask that Cabinet colleagues endorse the strategy today. I also ask that Cabinet instructs the Director for Public Health and the Partnerships and Inclusion Manager to develop a food action plan for Torbay Council to deliver against the aims of the strategy and present it to Cabinet for approval within 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Seconded this evening by Councillor Tyerman.
Yes, I'm very happy to second that. I'd just like to go back to mention the fact that this was looked at overview and scrutiny, and I attended that meeting, and I think that it was expressed then both by the overview and scrutiny board, by myself at the meeting, and by officers, that what was going to be important in this is looking at what we could do as a result of this strategy to actually make a difference, because I believe strategies always serve a purpose, but that purpose is certainly enhanced if it leads to positive change. And I think it's therefore, I'm very glad to see that the second clause has been added to this to develop that food action plan. I think that in general terms, a timescale of 3 months is probably tough, but I'm looking forward to that being met, and we actually feeling that we can actually have some action here that follows through from the strategy. And I think that that action is what will make me feel that the work of producing the strategy is going to be worthwhile. So I support this absolutely from where we are. That's great. I'm going to be looking even more intently at that action plan to see what difference that can make for our residents in Torbay and our contribution to food security on a wider scale as well.
Thank you very much. Move to comments or questions within the Cabinet. Move outside of the Cabinet. Comments or questions or debate. My apologies, Councillor Maggie Douglas-Dunbar. If you'd like to join us, thank you, Councillor. I do apologise for not seeing you down there.
That's all right, thank you very much. It might just be having, if it's going back to overview and scrutiny, what I'm going to ask is probably going just as well to be said there anyway. But having read the document, I was looking at what was going to be put into place to an educational programme, because I didn't see the word education very much, to actually support people in growing their own food, and also supporting women or men, shouldn't be sexist here, to cook from scratch and actually look at menu planning as well. So really it was just around looking at how we help our residents to move forward with how they manage food from a point of growing and from cooking.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that the Cabinet member responsible will pick up that in the summing up. Thank you very much. Councillor Tranter.
Thank you. Yeah, when I've spoken to officers about this, certainly education has been a big key word. I'm sorry that didn't come across in the document maybe as well as it could have done, and we can certainly look into that, because we've absolutely discussed people growing their own food, people keeping chickens in their garden and all that kind of thing. So that's something that we can definitely discuss again at scrutiny, and definitely get on the action plan. I also, I just wanted to add as well, this, the officer Laura Hill that wrote this, she's one of our new officers, and I just felt that this particular document was wrote in such an accessible way that it was almost storytelling of the process of food and how socially and culturally food is within our lives, and I just wanted to thank her for writing it in such a great way.
Thank you very much indeed, and that is noted. Okay, we will move on to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We move on to item 8, which is the Torbay and Devon Safeguarding Adult Partnership, and it's back to you, Councillor Tranter.
Thank you. So I would like to thank the Torbay and Devon Safeguarding Adult Partnership Board, also known as TDSAP, for all the work that they continue to do to keep some of our most vulnerable residents safe. This annual report has been produced in response to our legal duty and that of all local authorities to establish a Safeguarding Adult Board in its local area. The objective of the Safeguarding Adult Board is to help and protect adults in its local area where there is reasonable cause to believe the adult has care and support needs and is at risk of or experiencing abuse or neglect and unable to protect themselves. Torbay Council work very closely with its partners ranging from the police, probation services, NHS, Live Well South West, trading standards, ambulance services and the fire and rescue services, to name but a few, as well as its subgroups from its community reference groups that works with those with lived experience, learning and improvement subgroup that focus on driving learning and practice improvements, its performance and quality assurance subgroup, and its operation delivery group, which is responsible for delivering the activities to support the TDSAP strategic priorities. So you can see that this is a very comprehensive and inclusive board that works in a very collaborative way. And today I'm requesting Cabinet support me in endorsing this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm happy to second this one from the Chair. This report actually went through the Health and Wellbeing Board probably a few weeks ago now. A great report and absolutely well worth a read. You can have a look on the website, which is Devon Safeguarding Adults Partnership.org.uk. Some of the highlights of the year, really some significant changes to the way that the board absolutely works over the year, and there's a great piece on here in the section on safeguarding adults reviews. So it is absolutely something that I would recommend to your reading, and more than happy to second that. We shall move to questions or debate around the Cabinet table or externally from the Cabinet table. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. And I would argue that this report is almost as important as the children's one earlier. The one question I did have was about safeguarding inquiries, where Torbay seems to be going upwards, whereas Devon is going downwards. And I was just wondering what might be driving that activity, whether there are any thoughts about that. And the other thing was just a comment about some of the stories about older people who've lost their lives. It's just tragic, but that's for people to read. But yeah, it's just about the safeguarding inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Any further comments? Okay, we'll move to Councillor Tranter to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. We can ask the board to certainly look into that regarding your question, and we'll get back to you about that. And with the stories, very sad, but I don't want to say we learn from things, because that's awful, but yeah, sad, but we do need to learn from these things as well, and move on and get better at what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So just to re-endorse the recommendation, and that's that the contents of the Torbay and Devon Safeguarding Adult Partnership Annual Report 23-24 and the requirement for the Torbay and Devon Safeguarding Adult Partnership to publish the annual report is noted. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 9, which is Torbay Council annual pay policy statement and the review of pensions discretions. Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report, Section 38(1) of the Localism Act 2011, requires English and Welsh authorities to produce a pay policy statement for each financial year. This is a statutory requirement and must be approved by full council. The pay policy statement draws together the council's overarching policies on pay and conditions and will be published on the council's website. So basically, not much has changed regarding this publication of the pay policy statement, which was last approved by council in February 2024. In regards to the pay policy rates, we still have not had the rates and bandings, so we're still waiting for these from government. Regarding our multipliers, they actually have changed for the positive, and that is narrowing the difference between the highest and lowest paid officers. So that's all a positive. So I'm happy to propose this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's very little I can add to the detailed description that Councillor Thomas gave earlier. The multipliers that was referred to, as we're all aware, because a large proportion of the increase in pay last year was a fixed amount rather than a proportionate amount. A fixed amount obviously has a greater impact on those on lower wage levels, so that's been very positive towards addressing the pay equalities that was being referred to. Clearly, we need to be able to push this through to council so that council can make a decision on it. It's a legal requirement, and as Councillor Thomas has explained, very little has changed. So I'm delighted to second this and recommend this report to council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Move to members, either in the Cabinet or out of the Cabinet. Okay, looks as though there's little debate on this one this evening. Just a reminder that the recommendation is that that council be recommended for little 1 and little 2. So this is not a decision from the Cabinet. It will ultimately be a council decision, but a recommendation from ourselves this evening. So all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Brings us on to the final item this evening, and some would say we left the best till last. Member champions. And if you're tuned in and watching from home, you may wonder indeed what a member champion actually is. Member champions are elected members, elected councillors, who act as an advocate or a spokesperson for a specific area of the council's business. The main responsibility of our member champions is to encourage communication and positive action over the issues that they represent. There is a job description in the council's constitution, and we were looking to make some changes, and we were going to change the Armed Forces champion. And why we did doing that, overview and scrutiny at their meeting in November last year requested that we consider introducing a champion to cover domestic abuse and sexual violence. So we are introducing this evening a new member champion, which will be a domestic abuse and sexual violence member champion, as well as appointing to the Armed Forces champion. We have gone through a rigorous process where we invited members to demonstrate an expression of interest. From that interest, we then asked them to give us an A4 resume of the things that they wanted to do, and then that concluded with an interview with myself and the deputy leader. And I can honestly say that the members who put themselves forward, they were all absolutely very much appointable, which made my job significantly harder to actually choose who we were going to appoint. So this evening our recommendation comes in 3 parts. The first part, that the Cabinet give thanks to Councillor Tranter for the work that she has undertaken up to date to champion the Council's work in respect of the armed forces. 2, that Councillor Mark Spagagna will be appointed as the Armed Forces Champion until May 2027. And that new role that I spoke about, Councillor Kat Johns will be appointed as the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Member Champion until May 2027. Absolutely delighted to bring that to Cabinet this evening, and so move. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very happy to second. As you say, it was a vigorous process, and I think a good one. I think it's the first time that champions have been appointed in this way. which is a much fairer way than it has been done in the past. And I'd like to thank Councillor Tranter and, of course, Councillor Emile, who did it for many years. I think should get a mention for all the hard work she did, not only as an officer, but as the champion. And I think we've got two first-class people coming forward. Mark Spagagna, who showed his experience when he was mayor of working with the armed forces, and has some new ideas going forward. And I think sometimes it's a good idea to have a fresh person going forward who can put their new ideas. Probably for the champion, maybe not for the deputy leader, though. Perhaps leave that as it is at the moment, Chairman. And of course, for the new champion, welcome, and I'm sure you'll do a superb job, Councillor Johns. So very happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I thought you might have mentioned you were a veteran as well there. I was expecting that one to come out this evening, but so you keep reminding me. Okay, so do we, any comments around the Cabinet table or outside of the Cabinet? In which case, I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And at exactly 18:30, this meeting is closed. Thank you.